The biggest problem with twist and horror is that oftentimes you end up feeling like you've already seen it all.
Now, nothing you'll see can physically harm you.
Nothing even surprises you anymore because you know what is fixing to happen.
There's gonna be something bad in there, I can feel it.
But every now and then something comes along that takes all of those previous twists, is able to combine them together to make something that you might just call the greatest twist in all of horror.
Get out of my head! Get out of my head!
And for me, there is one clear example of this, and it's Black Mirror's Playtest. But before we can go with Cooper to test the most personal survival horror game in history, first we have a word from our sponsor. And once again, the sponsor is me because, well, I have merch. And I can't just wear it throughout half of the video and not point out that you can also own it yourself. That's all. Everything's linked right down below if you're interested in checking some of it out, and we can get right into Playtest. Quickest ad read you've ever seen. The episode starts with Cooper here packing a bag and grabbing his passport to leave on a trip and leave his house behind. And in the car on the way to the airport, he gets a call from his mom, but he chooses to ignore it for now. And after making it to the airport and getting settled into his seat on the plane, we can see that he's playing a game on his phone, and in front of him is an old movie with a giant spider on the side of a building. But it's clear that he's too focused on the game that he's currently playing that even the stewardess has to come up to him and say,
I'm gonna have to ask you to switch that off for now.
Oh, okay.
He agrees and does so, and while he's putting his phone away, he notices a little girl that seems a little hesitant to be here on this plane. And so being the kind guy that he is, he begins to play a little game with her where he treats the airplane like it's a roller coaster with all the turbulence. But not caring if he's going to make a fool of himself or not, he decides to help somebody else so that way, instead of them being focused on all of the scary stuff going on around them, he can at least help them to have a good time and make it through this one moment. And just after this, we get to see him have a good time as he's going abroad to all of these different countries. He's clearly there for a while because he grows this very nice beard. A very nice beard just like his father, because his dad is Kurt Russell from The Thing. This is who we need for The Thing Part 2. And speaking of that, I am working on a Part 2 of The Thing video. Just give me a few more months until eventually he finds himself in London. And it's in the Raven Inn that we pick up with him as he's looking through a dating app trying to find a date for the evening. And it's on this date with Sonia that he begins to open up to her as she asks him why he's been traveling so much.
Really, to get away from the family home. That's what I'm doing.
And we find out that this is the last place that he's going to on his trip, and that next week he's finally going back home. But it's the next morning that we find him at Sonia's place where she notices a scar on his shoulder and asks him what it was from. And it turns out that he had gotten in a fight with a bully in high school whose name was Josh Peters.
He hit me with this like metal rod thing.
And it's here that his phone begins to ring again, and it's his mom still trying to get a hold of him. But once again, he chooses to ignore the call.
Okay, that was a little impersonal.
And trying to avoid the conversation of what's really going on here with him and his mom, he begins to look around Sonia's apartment while she's making breakfast and notices that she has quite a few video games.
You're like a gamer. Cool.
And if you look closely in Sonia's video game collection, you can see Dark Souls 2, where Hannah here actually voiced the character Sweet Shalikr. I think I said that right.
Shalqua.
I didn't make it very far in Dark Souls 2. I played a lot more Bloodborne than this. This, yes. Now with some small talk out of the way and some Marmite on toast ready for him to try, he's saved by his mom trying to call him again.
I don't know. Answer it.
It's this call that causes Cooper to finally start to explain why he's not ready to talk to his mom. Since the whole reason that he went on this trip was to get away from his home after taking care of his dad for the last year, who had early onset Alzheimer's and just passed away.
Yeah, he was my best friend.
And it was from going through all of this tragedy and even having moments where he would look at his dad and it was clear that his dad didn't know who he was anymore, that he lost a piece of himself. And he also lost that connection that he had with his mom. And now after being gone and not speaking with her, doesn't know where to start or what to say to her. This whole trip was just his way of getting away from the hurt for just a little while to hopefully make some new memories that'll be able to fill the void a little bit. But it's all fixing to end because he's about to have to go back home to confront it all next week. And it's in this very sweet moment that Cooper is finally opening up for what is most likely the first time since his dad passed that Sonia understands. She leans in, kisses him on his forehead, tells him that he's a good guy, and also tells him,
Call me Mom.
as Sonia walks away and we see Cooper pick up his phone to call his mom, but instead chooses to put it back down. Later that day, Cooper's at an ATM trying to get money, but the problem is his card is being rejected. As he then finds out that his card info was stolen, and now he doesn't have a way to get money to buy a plane ticket to even make it back home. It's here that he has to sit down to figure out what to do next, and he almost calls his mom in this moment to figure something out. But instead, he chooses to call Sonia because he has a plan.
Yeah, it's Odd Jobs.
It's an app that he's been using on his trip to make a little bit of extra money from all of these little odd jobs around different countries that he's in. And it's here that he finds a listing for a playtest of a new video game with some company called Saito
Gamer.
Yeah.
which is this huge horror gaming company that Sonia knows a lot about and tells him that if he can get any pictures of what they're currently working on, he can make way more money than just doing this little odd job here. And sounding like a good opportunity, Cooper accepts it and then heads off to their headquarters. And if this building looks familiar, that's because this is the X-Mansion that they used in X-Men First Class, as well as a ton of other TV shows and movies. And it's inside the headquarters that the first thing that we see is this picture on a wall of an old house with one lit window and a silhouette standing in it. Just after this, Cooper is escorted deeper into the building by Miss Katie.
I'm just Katie.
Hi.
Following Just Katie, Just Cooper is amazed by the level of technology that they're using all over the place in this office space. And with this level of technology, when they make it to the room that they're going to be running this little test in, Katie has to ask for Cooper's phone to make sure that all of this can stay as secret as possible. And not only that, but she also presents him with an NDA so that way he has to keep his mouth shut about everything that's fixing to happen here. And she also tells him that there is a small medical procedure that will be done for this test.
Sorry for a game?
Luckily, it's nothing big, and she reassures him that they're not going to take his kidneys. The only problem is the paper that he is supposed to sign is missing, causing Katie to have to leave for a moment to go and get the extra paperwork. It's here that Cooper sees his chance as he jumps up, grabs his phone, turns it back on, opens the case that is sitting on the table with all of this new technology in it, takes a quick picture, sends it to Sonia, and Katie comes walking back in with nothing out of place in the room, and Cooper sitting there waiting for her to return. Now, Black Mirror is not interconnected in any real way, but this symbol right here did appear in the episode White Bear from season 2. Seeing nothing out of place, she begins to explain that the experiment that they're currently working on is an augmented reality system that works through this mushroom that has to be attached to the base of his skull to sink him into the system, which obviously makes him a little nervous, and he asks if she is qualified to do this.
I haven't killed anyone yet.
Being reasonably confused by all of this, Cooper still gives her the go-ahead. She hooks him up and then sits down to start the process at 5:38. Just then is when Cooper's phone begins to ring again, and it's his mom again. Very confused, Katie grabs the phone and says,
Turn that off.
With a questioning look at Cooper, she turns it off again just as the system is finally ready to go and they can finally test out the first game. And it's here that we see this cute little 3D gopher guy come climbing out of one of the holes that Katie placed on the table in front of Cooper. And he is just blown away by what he's currently looking at, trying to figure out how this works and what's going on as the gopher slowly becomes more and more realistic in its graphics. And then Katie explains that this is a mental projection from the system that Cooper is hooked up in, and that
You can see him. I can't.
And then he gets to play what is probably the coolest game of whack-a-mole that anybody has ever played before. And while at first we're seeing this from Cooper's perspective, we then see from the camera in the corner of the room what it looks like to everybody else. It's clear that there is nothing there except for Cooper, who is seeing and is currently winning this game of whack-a-mole, or whack-a-gopher. And since Katie can't see it, she has to ask, is the gopher 2D or 3D?
No. 3D. Super 3D.
And that's it. That's the end of the experiment. Now he gets to, go back, I guess, to Sonia's place. They can talk about everything. And then next week he gets to go home and talk to his mom and everything's going to be great. Right? Wrong, because this is an incredible demo that Cooper just went through. And Katie says that there is another experiment that is much more in depth. And
There'd be more money in it, of course.
And already being impressed and amazed by everything that he's seen so far, he agrees and they head to the headman's office where they can then talk to Sho Saito. Hope I said that right. And after an awkward greeting, Cooper and Sho sit down to talk about what makes horror games so much fun.
No.
Fun. Fun is good.
And Mr. Saito begins to explain his side of it and that he has always loved to make the player jump. And then it's about the liberation of facing a fear and making it out on the other side unscathed. And that's why this new game that he's working on is going to be
the most personal survival horror game in history.
Something that will be able to learn the player as they play the game to figure out what are their true fears and put them in so they can actually face their worst nightmares. And to test out this experience, they have to download the software to Cooper, so Katie hooks him up and begins the process again. But they can't just have Cooper experience his worst nightmares here in this office, they have to take him to the Harlech Shadow House, or at least the house that the game that they made within the show was based on. And it's here that he's just going to be getting paid to spend the night in the house. And after being given an earpiece so he can keep in contact with Katie, she then reminds him that
Now, nothing you'll see can physically harm you.
since it's all just like the Gopher game earlier, it's just there to scare him, not hurt him. Right? Just in case it does get to be a little too much for Cooper to handle, they come up with a safe word, and he comes up with stop, which is easy enough to remember and pretty straightforward. So after Katie leaves to get all set up in the observation room, Cooper finds that there is not much to do in this old house. And he also finds that the wine here is non-alcoholic because they're running an experiment and they need him to be in a clear head. And it's just before he finally makes himself comfortable in a chair that we see a painting on the wall of the estate. Remember this painting and how it looks right now because it's fixing to come back up. Bored and remembering that he doesn't have his phone, Cooper sits down and begins to talk to Katie for a moment until he notices that there's a book that he can read, and it's The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Just before he can get into the book, though, a big spider comes crawling out from beside the fireplace directly towards him.
You see a spider?
You don't see that?
As it keeps getting closer to Cooper, he tries to explain that it's right there. And it's nearly as though he's trying to plead with the spider to stay away, and obviously the spider wants to listen to him. Wait, no, it wants to get really close.
Tough guy like you, scared of spiders.
Cooper tries to play it off as though he's not scared of spiders, it's just he doesn't want them so close to him, and he gets a chance to stomp it into nothing. Literally nothing, like there's nothing there. It was just a part of the game. And it's right as he sits back down that the lamp flickers and he notices that painting again has changed. Where originally it was just a dark painting of the house, now there is a light in one of the windows. And then in the blink of an eye, there is a man standing in that same window. And just like that, the man is then gone, but it doesn't seem like he's gone very far as there's now somebody walking around upstairs. And again, just trying to play it off as though it's not that scary, he says that it must just be leaky pipes and it's definitely not anything up there as Cooper walks over to the staircase and finds the real source of the sound. Katie, trying to figure out what happened, asks Cooper to explain what he is currently seeing as he then realizes that it is Josh Peters, his high school bully that he is currently looking at. Then after ripping out Peter's heart and shouting Kali Ma, He then grabs his glass of wine and walks to the kitchen through Peter's and begins to explain to Katie how much he knows about wine and that he went to a grape festival one time. But it's here that she doesn't let him slide and calls him discursive.
Why is discursive? Discursive.
Talkative.
Then she further explains that the reason he's doing this is to try to mask his fear and to not think about what he just saw. Going even further and saying that it's the same reason many people leave their TVs on at night when they're trying to sleep. Katie does a really good job here by bringing Cooper back into the moment because after all, the entire experiment is meant to scare him. So to just let him off the hook so easy kind of defeats the purpose of why he's here to begin with. Now looking for another way to cope with this fear, he begins to look for snacks in the cabinets. When he realizes as he has the cabinet door open, the second he closes it, Peter's is going to be standing like right there. Sure enough, he's right, and it's just Peter's shadow on the wall as it turns to look at him.
Jump scares get pretty old pretty fast.
Not being able to see this abomination that Cooper is currently looking at, Katie asks him to explain what it is, and he stumbles to describe this insane-looking spider thing that he realizes also has the face of Peter's. It's here that Cooper questions if this is all just in his head or if this is a part of the software for some reason, and Katie's just like, nah, that's all you. Being quite a bit more freaked out by this weird spider thing in front of him, the real problem starts here as Katie is trying to speak, but her voice begins to break up until she finally goes completely silent and Cooper can no longer communicate with. But he's not alone for long as somebody has arrived and is currently knocking at the front door.
You're in danger.
Sonia?
It's Sonia, or maybe it's just Cooper's mind trying to use Sonia to scare him in this moment, since that's how this whole experiment works. And he's fully convinced that this is still a part of the experiment and that it's done really well to recreate Sonia, but there's clearly a flaw right there on her very real face that he touches. And the whole time that Cooper is trying to rationalize what is going on, Sonia is trying to explain to him why he is in danger. But all Cooper can do is ask,
Are you actually here right now?
After Sonia's reassurance that she is real and that she is there, she tells him that the software that Saito is currently using has been rejected for not being safe on all of their patents that they've applied for. But Cooper is still pretty sure that this is a part of the experiment and that she must have been hired to do this, and even applauds her performance in this moment. Then he even offers her some non-alcoholic wine and walks to the kitchen, and Sonia the entire time is trying to tell him about these 5 other tourists that were brought on by odd jobs and then completely disappeared in the last year. But still not taking it serious at all, Cooper just laughs it off and asks,
How'd you find me?
What?
How'd you know where I am?
And obviously all she had to do was look up where the headquarters was of this big gaming company and then drive there. But Cooper's still confused because they're not at the headquarters. They're at a different house on the big property that is out there. So he wants her to clarify how she found him in this specific house on the property.
I tracked you.
You tracked me.
Yeah, with your GPS on your phone.
Cooper laughs at this because he doesn't have his phone. And by telling her this, it causes her facial expression to change and also causes him to become discursive again. Even more so when she then pulls a knife out of one of the drawers and begins to walk towards him, saying he should have called his mom, but instead he called her. And now she has led him there. Finally fed up and freaked out, he says that he's done and goes to leave the room. With the knife sticking out of his back, Sonia tries to grab him, and instead he throws her to one of the cabinets and then stands there in shock at everything that is going on as she then runs and tackles him to the ground, driving the knife even further into him. Sonia gets the upper hand as she's trying to now choke him on the ground, and he's just struggling to reach the bottle nearby to hopefully knock her and then be able to get away from the house, but it's not going to work because it's too far away. She then grabs him and slams him into the ground again, driving the knife all the way out of his shoulder. Screaming at this, he begins to fight back even more as Sonia's face then completely distorts and then changes into like this skinless monster, and he sees his opportunity, grabs the thing's head, and slams it into the knife that is sticking out out of his shoulder. It's here that we get a close-up on his face as he's just losing it on the floor as the camera slowly pans back and we see that there is nothing there. And it's here that we finally hear Katie's voice again. She's just trying to figure out what is currently happening because they haven't been able to get in touch with him. They've been speaking, but he hasn't been able to hear them, so he hasn't been responding. And Cooper is just rambling in this moment as he's trying to explain to her that this woman that he knows named Sonia showed up and she really stabbed him. He really felt the knife go into his back and come out of his shoulder.
Nothing you see can harm or even touch you.
Growing even more angry, Cooper reiterates at how real everything was, that Sonia was real, her arm felt warm, that he really felt her stab him. But Katie tells him that it's not possible. Unless
what?
I don't know.
Unless the neuron net somehow figured out how to tap into more than just audio and visual sensations. Overwhelmed, Cooper begins to yell his safe word stop, but he sees that that's not fast enough for all of this to end, and he begins to try to tear the mushroom from the base of his skull, and Katie starts to plead with him, you can't do that. If you do that, it could kill you. And we hear Mr. Saito over the earpiece that gets Cooper's attention. Saito gives the go-ahead for them to start the deactivation process, but now Cooper has to make it to the access point, where he heads upstairs and starts down the hallway, but stops because he is convinced that
There's gonna be something bad in there. I can feel it.
he knows this because he can feel it, and he can feel the device digging around in his brain, trying to dig up more of his personal trauma, and he knows that it knows. And it knows that he has a problem with his mom, and his mom must be behind this door, and she's not just in there waiting with open arms. The whole time, Katie's just trying to keep him calm and get him to the access point, but Cooper knows that she's not in control anymore. But she still persists that he must open this door or else it won't be able to end, and finally gets him to open it. Stepping inside to just a room, Cooper begins to calm down and tells Katie that he made it. But where is the access point?
There is no access point.
What?
She begins to laugh and tells him that they just wanted to see if he was broken enough to begin to obey instructions without question.
We have.
Oh, no. Katie, come on.
Cooper turns to leave as he should have done a long time ago, but the door is gone and Katie begins to ask about his mom. But Cooper can't remember his mom. He can't remember anything. She asks him where he grew up, what's his favorite band, what's his favorite flavor of ice cream, but he can't remember any of it because it hasn't just been analyzing his memories, it's been overriding them this entire time, to the point that he can't even recognize his own reflection, and soon he will be nothing.
You'll be just like your dad.
The voice continues as the man stares at his reflection and begins to just scream, shut up, to get out of his head, to get out of his head. But the only real way out is for him to remove it himself as he breaks the mirror, picks up the glass, and begins cutting it out of his neck to just make the voices stop. Just then is when two men and Katie come rushing in to restrain him and shut it off, but the man just keeps screaming for it all to end.
Get out of my head! Get out of my head!
Not recognizing Katie or Saito, they realize that they can't stop it and that it is taken over. Katie then tries to tell the man who no longer knows who he is or where he's at or what's going on that they can't stop it, that it's dug in so much deeper than what it was supposed to.
I don't know who I am.
Saito then gets close to the man and tries to apologize, then tells the other two to take him and put him with the others. In Saito's office again, Cooper is losing his mind, screaming, stop, 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 but Katie's right there and she immediately removes the device and everything stops for a moment. It was only 1 second that had passed, and they're not sure if it was a malfunction or if Cooper was just too susceptible to the device. Either way, it's over now, and Saito apologizes for the experience being far more powerful than what they had intended. As Cooper is then driven away from the headquarters, we see him on a plane, and then finally make it home with a little bit of relief on his face, finally ready to talk to his mom. And he finds her in his bedroom, but instead of greeting him, she grabs the phone and says that she needs to call Cooper. Walking over to her, he tries to tell her that he's home, that he's there now, but all she can do is ask,
"Where did Cooper go?"
With Cooper right there, it doesn't change anything for her. She has to call him. She has to call him. She has to call him. Dialing the number, we can hear his heart rate begin to increase as he tries to get her attention.
Mom! Mom!
She's calling him again, but now nobody is home. As we see Cooper convulsing in the chair back in the room of where the experiment was supposed to start. Katie scrambles to remove the device, but it is too late. Afterwards, Saito and Katie are trying to figure out what happened. They know that the call interfered with the system, but Katie is positive that she had turned off the phone before they ever started. They figure that he must have done something when she had to leave the room to go get the other paper, and that this was just an oversight on her part by not checking the phone before they started. And at the moment the call interfered with the upload process, then went dead. Like that. Saito then asks what he was shouting right as it happened. She says that it was just one word over and over.
Mom.
Saito tells her to make a note of this, and we see Cooper's body being zipped up in a body bag. And we also see that the total time lapse of the experiment was only 0.04 seconds before everything fell apart. But it's also interesting to note that during this time when Cooper's entire brain fired up, he experienced all 6 of the major emotions in this short period of time. All of this happening in what is essentially an instant, as we then are left with the credits. And now we can finally answer the question of how good is this twist? And as always, our first category is the story, and how well does the story serve the twist? One thing is very clear, and that's that escapism is a very powerful thing. That's the reason that many of you are watching this right now, to hopefully escape your life for just a moment and all of the craziness that is currently going on, if only for a moment. Cooper, for the entirety of the episode, is trying to do the same thing, just to the fullest extent, by leaving behind his household to go and travel and to try to get away from everything that had been going on in his life with his dad for the last year.
Really, to get away from the family home. That's what I'm doing.
But his issue is that he keeps pushing off his reality every single time that it comes calling. Even to the point of that final phone call where his mind then tries its hardest to continue running away until it finally collapses in on it.
Mom! Mom!
At a literal and figurative level, this twist is amazing. It works so well with the story just at the surface and gets even better the deeper you go, the same way that his mind does in the episode. So it's definitely one of the easiest ratings that I can give. It's 100. The second category is acting, and how well does the actor pull off the twist? And Wyatt Russell does an amazing job from beginning to end, by starting off as just a goofy guy going on a vacation, to him becoming so talkative to cover up the fear that he has that just seems so relatable to me, as well as having a full-blown mental breakdown to the point that you begin to worry about Wyatt himself from this episode. And really, everybody in this episode is just incredible, but Wyatt is the true star of this, because not only does he pull off one twist, but he's able to perfectly pull off 2. And so I have to give this a very high score of a 94. And now for predictability, and how well balanced is this twist when it comes to trying to figure out what is going to happen. And once again, a double twist is coming in to help to make it a lot less predictable. Really, on your first watch, you're not thinking that the phone is going to interfere with the system. All you're thinking is, oh no, the phone rang. He's going to get caught because Katie knows that she turned it off. So all of your worries about what is really going on are misplaced to later in the story, because it's not till he makes it to the house that he begins to not be able to trust his senses that we too begin to question what we are currently seeing.
You see a spider.
You don't see that?
So at that point, we've forgotten all about the phone call in the beginning, and then we get the first twist of him going from in the house, losing his mind, to being in Saito's office, letting us then breathe for a moment as we realize that, oh, that's where all of the craziness happened. And your only two thoughts after that are either everything's going to be okay and now he gets to go home and deal with, the situation with his mom, or that there might be a residual part of the system making him see stuff when he makes it back home, leaving everyone in shock when he goes from being in his house with his mom to sitting there in the chair yelling mom over and over again. Because hardly anybody noticed that the setup within the house and the staircase is the same as in his own house. And it makes it even better on a second watch when you start to pick up on all of the little details that happen before he ever makes it to the experiment. The big spider movie on the plane, the Raven Inn, Sonia asking about the scar that was right here where he gets stabbed by her later on, him explaining that it was Josh Peters that gave him that scar, the picture at headquarters that had the one lit window. But my absolute favorite is the very first line spoken in the episode from the stewardess.
I'm gonna have to ask you to switch that off for now.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. So I'm conflicted on how to score this because your first thought for the twist is something is going to go wrong with the software, but you probably didn't guess where it went wrong, which is why we all get thrown by that first twist. So I'll play it safe and give it an 85, and then you can let me know down in the comments if I'm off on that, if it needs to be higher, if it needs to be lower, but I figured kind of in the middle would be good. The fourth category is satisfaction and how good is the payoff for the audience. And considering that in all of the previous videos that I've done in this series, this episode of Black Mirror keeps getting brought up in the comments. The first twist alone hits you really hard and gets your attention, but then the second twist really makes you question everything that you've seen up to this point, causing it to really stand out in your mind and making it very rewatchable, because the entire time that you're rewatching it, you're just screaming at him to answer the phone or call his mom back. But what stands out to you and what's so memorable is the fact that he does call out for his mom in the end. So being that this twist does remind us of where is everybody, time enough at last, and perchance to dream, I have to give this a 91. And finally, for the most important category, the Poltergeiger, which is literally just my opinion, and I already told you in the last one, this is my favorite episode of Black Mirror. It's getting 100. I love anything that makes me question everything that I'm currently seeing, and this one here is so perfectly balanced by giving us enough evidence to not question it too hard.
There is no access point.
What?
And rewatching it for this video made me appreciate the twist even more than what I already did. But all things considered, this twist is very well set up and very well played out. So I have no hesitation with this score of 100, meaning that this twist comes out to a 94 for its overall rating, and that it takes first place in the greatest twist in all of horror. But it's clear that this twist is nothing short of incredible, from being able to pull off a perfect double twist to also being able to perfectly set up what is going to happen with the very first line. But there are still so many more twists out there, which means there are many more episodes of this series to come. And in the next one, we return back to the Twilight Zone. And let me know what other shows that you want me to cover in this series, because the Twilight Zone has a lot. Black Mirror has quite a few really good ones, but there's so many other shows out there that I just don't know a lot about. But until then, be sure to watch all of the previous episodes in this series, and thank you for all of the huge support on this series so far. If I would have known that this would do so well, I would have started much sooner. And so thank you for that. And thanks as always to all of the channel members, from Moto Jet Setters, Resident Scallywag, and DeCosti, to Braxton Volk, That Guy Though, and Christine. Y'all are all amazing, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but all of the members get to see the videos early, they get discounts on merch, they also get access to all of the videos in the back catalog that are not available to everybody else. So if you do think about signing up, thank you ahead of time, and if not, Thank you just for watching. And don't forget about the merch. All of that is linked down below. I've just got to plug it here one more time before the video ends. Thank you if you do check it out. That's amazing. You're amazing. And it also helps so much when you make it all the way to the end of the video. So for that, I hope that you have an extra blessed day and that I'll see you in the next one.